Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Young Henry's Podcast, a show that goes deep into the lives of young Americans and focuses on tactical strategies you can implement to become wealthy. There is a blueprint for success in this country if you're willing to listen. Coming to you from Houston, Texas, my name is Mark Roloff, and I'm sitting at a comfortable distance from my co-host, Bryant Roloff. Today, we're talking about everybody's worst nightmare, working all week just to end up broke, stressed out, and underwater. Today, we're talking about America's rat race. Let's get it. Welcome to tonight's show, The American Dream. In a nutshell, it's the ideal that every citizen in the United States should have an equal opportunity to achieve success and prosperity through hard work, determination, and initiative. Our perception as Americans is that things will continue to get exponentially better. In essence, we will have it better today than our parents had it yesterday. Fueled by social media, Americans have this unique perspective that life is supposed to be easy. That if we just go to college, get good grades, earn a degree, put a few applications in, then bam, the Porsche, mansion, and endless crab legs are just around the corner. The major problem with society today is social media and its effects on consumption. The fact is that life is not easy, and that all the things that you see, I see, and the impressionable young see on social media are just versions of a public persona posted online. We're all guilty of it. We take hundreds of selfies just to post the best one on Instagram. We take photos with the right light, edit the photo with 6 different filters, a little tweak here, a little tweak there. It's a victimless crime. No big deal. But it is a big deal. You have to ask yourself, if you're only showing the best parts of your life on social media, do you think that others are doing the same? To the social media extreme is the Instagram model on her hot girl summer. You see her post all year long, from this beach to the next beach, always on vacation. And you wonder yourself, damn, how is this girl always on vacation? What am I doing wrong in my life that I can't have what she has? I work 40 hours a week, and I can barely go on vacation once a year. But the reality is, it's all fake. She took 20 bikinis on one vacation, take thousands of photos while she's there, and she posts those photos all year long. In reality, what you don't see is that she paid for that trip on credit, and she's now back in her hole-in-the-wall, 600 square foot apartment, hoping that she's going to get a sponsorship deal to make her next credit card payment. Social media is not real, but we take it at face value. We're tied to a little black box in our hands, and we wonder why we don't have what we see on the other side of the screen. Social media is like a meal at Chipotle. It's full of shit. The sad thing is we consume things to make ourselves feel good about our position and feed our own image of status. We all want to be somebody, but the majority of people are just hamsters on a wheel, living paycheck to paycheck. We might be hamsters wearing Gucci belts, but they're hamsters nonetheless. Consumerism is the heart of the rat race, and we're here tonight to ask, what is the rat race? Let's welcome tonight's guests.
Yo, what's up, you guys? What's up to my young Henrys out there? Welcome to the Young Henrys Podcast. Henry standing for high earners, not rich yet, but I'm sure hoping that you want to be, which has brought you here. My name is Bryant Roloff, and my co-host, Mark Roloff, here in the studio live, and we are going to be talking today about the rat race. So kind of kicking it off from the beginning, are you in the rat race? How do you know if you're in the rat race? And how the hell do you get out of it? So let's go to Mark and talk to him.
And that's the rub. Everybody's in the rat race. There are very few that are not. I think everybody, no matter what background you come from, you start out in the rat race in a certain position in life. Some people are given a little bit more up front from their parents in the form of education and contacts. But no matter where you are, whether you start out better off or worse off, everybody's in the rat race. But what is the rat race?
Yeah, the rat race to me is if you're sitting in your car in traffic and you're going to a job that, even if you like it, it's something that you have to do. It's a lot of the rat race to me has to do with the have tos in life. And if you're sitting in the car and you have to go to work and you have to work this job and your time is not your own in some way, shape, or form, you are in the rat race.
Yeah, 100%. It's that idea that you have to go to work or you have to do something in order to pay that bill. And a lot of people are just living paycheck to paycheck, just scraping by, buying things for status. And at the end of the day, they don't get any further ahead. You know, have you ever heard of something called lifestyle creep?
Yeah.
Like lifestyle creep is this idea that as you continue to make a little bit more money, you buy something just a little bit better car, a little bit better house, and all of a sudden your monthly expenses go from 4,000, now you're all the way to 10,000, and just creeps up on you. And then when something happens in your life where you lose a job or you have cancer in your family or something like that, now you're at a complete loss. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and let's take a step back from there and think about if you didn't lose your job. Let's just say that you start to, every time you get a promotion, every time you get something positive to happen to you financially, immediately your thought is to reward yourself for this great promotion, this great life event. And so you go out and buy a lifestyle creep item, a car, a bigger house, nicer furniture, better activities, whatever it may be that is your personal tick that you've always wanted. You go ahead and compensate yourself for such a great achievement. The problem becomes that you have not done anything to increase your savings rate. You have not done anything to get you any closer to financial freedom. And so therefore, you are still within the rat race and actually more dependent on the actual source, which is your direct income, in the event that if you were to lose it, you would be in big trouble because now you have all the payments for these luxury items. These lifestyle creep items are now a big part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, when you buy these lifestyle items that make you feel good, that show that status, but you're buying them on credit, I mean, that actually is a burden in your life. That is a lot of stress to pay that payment every single month. And, little things come up, right? So what happens is, if you're living pretty close paycheck to paycheck and the HVAC goes out or the furnace goes out or somebody breaks a window, well, now you're buying that on credit. Now we have another bill on top of the bill you already couldn't afford. And you're living what seems to be a really nice life, but it's actually a very stressful life. I mean, you deal with that money stress, you know what I mean? How many times have you seen people on TV, they show these sitcoms and you got the guy covering his face, looking at a spreadsheet, and you can't figure out how to pay the bills, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the wife's expecting a nice vacation in 2 months. It's a rough life to live that way.
Yeah, and that's the idea of the Young Henrys is that we're going to teach you two different techniques. We're going to teach you how to play defense, which is to save the money that you're making from your 9-to-5 job and to maximize your life by those savings. Think about it in terms of saving energies. So every ounce of energy that you can save and store is something that you'll be able to use later, but also we'll be teaching a bit of offense. So on the podcast, we'll talk a little bit about what we've done to create tremendous offenses for ourselves. And we'll also talk to other hosts or other guest speakers that will talk about different ways, different techniques that they use outside of their 9-to-5, outside of their traditional work that creates offense and additional energy units that they will be able to use later. That essentially, if it's stored up and they can use this utilization of energy at a different time in their life, that is the financial freedom. Those are the chains starting to break, and you're starting to get out of the have to. The rat race no longer applies to you because while you still may go to a job, while you still may have obligations, you do not have to go to that job. The obligations you have are the now get to, but first you have to play great defense, then you have to execute great offense, and that's how you get there.
Yeah, I mean, defense is a big part of it. And like when we talk about defense, it's financial defense, right? Like, but it's very hard for most people to break that cycle of spending, to actually admit to yourself that you can't afford this.
Yeah.
And once you built that habit of continuing to spend on credit, it's very hard to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Almost something major has to happen in your life for you actually to stop spending. And even then, it's very, very difficult, because everybody wants to continue just to buy things at a whim. But at the end of the day, if you don't stop yourself from that habit and say, hey, listen, my goals of getting to wherever you want to go are a little bit bigger than just having the Gucci belt or the nice t-shirt. A $10 t-shirt does the same thing as a $100 t-shirt. Why somebody buys a $100 t-shirt, I'll never know. But it's crazy how some people will spend their money. If you think about it, there's people that are making minimum wage or maybe even $15 an hour that go out and buy the $100 t-shirt. I mean, that's 6 to 7 hours of their work on that t-shirt, right? So they spent 7 hours of their life working for a corporation, making somebody else rich. Meanwhile, they only have a t-shirt to show for it that they're going to wash. They're going to drop mustard on it, and it's smoked. It's done.
Right.
I mean, and you're throwing it away. It's crazy.
Yeah, we have a consumption problem in this country. There is a direct link, or at least a perceived link, towards consuming items and happiness, in the sense that a lot of people feel like if I buy that $100 shirt, if I buy that vehicle that's going to have an $800 payment, or if I take that trip to Disneyland that I can't afford, that I'm going to be happy, that my kids are going to be happy, that our experience is going to lead to general happiness. And of course, the data, the science, and your own empirical knowledge of doing these things actually probably tells you the exact opposite, that you get a spike in happiness once you buy it. People talk about a shopper's high or some sort of drug or dopamine boost when you initially buy an item, a consumption item. And that is absolutely true. Psychologically, you do get a high by purchasing the item and actually taking it out of the store. But that high is quickly diminished. And in fact, people measure utility levels, which is an economic term for happiness, but they measure levels of happiness a day, a week, a month after, let's say, a major purchase. Let's call it a fancy shirt or even a vehicle. And they find that the happiness level is actually at or below where the baseline level was before that purchase came. So what that means is that you are buying these items, you are finding yourself deeper into the rat race, and you still don't have that payoff in happiness. There is no correlation between those items and sustained long-term happiness. And so that is something that we'll explore in depth, because that's something that I feel is plaguing this country.
Yeah. I mean, that temporary feeling of, happiness is definitely eroded the first payment that comes in the mail, right? Like when you got to make that first $800 a month payment and you actually watch that money come out of your account, that's where the stress starts building. And then that vehicle, once it breaks down, especially if you're buying a non-domestic vehicle, like those payments for oil changes and maintenance are very expensive. Like fixing something like a Range Rover or BMW, they tend to be very expensive to fix compared to your traditional domestic vehicle. But this idea of buying things that you can't really afford on credit because it makes you feel good starts to get you in this pattern of where you're working harder and harder and harder at your job, trying to make somebody rich, hoping you're going to get that next promotion. And I mean, you really see it in the statistics. I mean, I don't know if you can run through these statistics for us here.
Yeah, so let's talk about the cost, right? This is the cost of working an incredible amount of hours to chase these consumer items. This is what it's costing this country, and specifically talking about the United States. But we're working 442 more hours than the Germans, 294 more hours than the United Kingdom, 300 more hours than the French worker. And get this, we are working 184 more hours than Japanese workers, which I have always been. I work for a Japanese company, and I understand that there is a different work philosophy, and they do work a ton, but we are working more than the Japanese workers. And yet, I wish we had a statistic on where that translates for happiness. But Mark, what do you think that translates to as far as where we rank in happiness in the world?
Man, we're down in the middle of the road as far as happiness goes. We're the richest country on earth. But if you look throughout, let's say our history of the last 100 years, we continue to work more and more and more. You look at something like the feminist revolution back in the day, it forced women from the house into the workforce, made them taxpayers. So you got this double income situation fueling the country. Then you kind of get into the 90s where you got cheap credit, and that keeps pushing the country. And now there's been this new transition in the last about 10 years into the gig economy. So a lot of people are not only working that full-time job, but they're also working a gig economy job. They're doing multiple things for multiple, basically, sources of income, and they're barely scraping by. That's the problem. It's not like somebody's working a full-time job and a side hustle and they're building net worth. I mean, there are some of those people, but most people are working a full-time job, they're working a side hustle, and they're barely paying their bills. Yeah. Some of my tenants are like this, right? They're doing that full-time job, they're driving Lyft, and they're barely making it. And that's the tough thing. I mean, it's come down to more and more hours from the American worker to pay for the lifestyle. You're in this global economy for wages relatively flat. Well, everything inflationary continues to go up. Prices going up, wages pretty flat. I mean, it's a tough thing to continue to have that lifestyle and push yourself forward. And we all have that view that things are going to continue to get better because they have for 100 years. But we're kind of at a breaking point where, every citizen really has to say, hey, can I actually afford this? Or should I take a step back, do the responsible thing, not buy it on credit, save a little bit more money, and try to find ways to invest that money and produce more income for myself that's saving myself time.
Yeah, great point. And the statistics prove that out as well. So Mark talked about us being in the middle of the pack. That's absolutely true. We're behind happiness scores in countries like Cuba, communist Cuba, socialist nation, Philippines. We're behind countries in Africa that are extremely poor in poverty. And what is the difference? It's not that they are super ecstatic about their situation, but they value things differently. In this country, we have like I mentioned, that direct correlation between happiness and consumption. And in other countries, let's take Cuba for an example, they do not have the ability to consume at the level that we have. They do not have the ability to earn and therefore to save and invest as we do. And so in that sense, their value stream is more linked to their time, and in particular, time with their families and loved ones. So their goals are to spend as much time and quality time with their loved ones as absolutely possible for them to do. And so therefore, their happiness is tied to that. If they're hitting that goal, they're happier. And what my point is with all of this is that as we start to drive for all of these consumer items, as we start to prioritize these consumer items, not only do we sink into the pitfall of the rat race and the have-tos, but we also miss our target. And probably more importantly, we miss our target in happiness. And that is what we want to avoid. We want to make sure that we are being deliberate and that happiness is being tied to things that we are intentionally trying to get to, that we're trying to achieve. Mark mentioned time. Time is something that is of the essence, and it is something that we want to strive to do better. We want to have more time. That's the point of the young Henrys, is that if we can save some of these energy utils, if we can be intentional with the time that we do have to work today to create more time for ourselves in the future, that will translate into how we want to spend that time. So we get to choose how we want to spend that time, which means that we should be prioritizing things like family, friends, high value activities. If you're really into sort of basket weaving, right? And that's just such a high value for you, then you should be spending as much time as possible on this planet basket weaving. That's what I think. And so that's what the Young Henrys is going to get you.
I don't know about basketball, even, to be honest. But no, I think, certainly our values have definitely changed since like post World War II, 1950s, right? I mean, the family's really been eroded, church has been eroded, and we look at things a lot differently. We do look at the materialistic stuff as if that's the goal, right? But we go for the big house, but we forget about the family inside of it, and that statement right there is a big thing, right? When you forget about the people that are inside of it, that's where you get the guy that's working 100 hours a week and he doesn't spend any time with the family, doesn't take the wife out on a date, barely sees the kids. But yeah, they're driving around in the Range Rover and he's stressed out as it gets. That man may be working 100 hours a week and she's working 50, take care of the kids. They're both stressed out. They're barely making the payment. And it's just not a great way to live. And the reality is that they bought a little bit less house that they could afford comfortably, and they stayed around maybe 24% on that debt to income on their house instead of going 39% because the bank would give it to them. They'd be much more comfortable. They wouldn't have that stress in their life. You know what I mean? But, for other countries, you talk about Cuba. You ever seen those videos of Cuba? It's like they go in the grocery store. There's nothing there.
Nothing there.
It's like, hey, is this Bread Tuesday? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. That is, sort of the essence of what communism can do. And I'm not preaching for communism or socialism. We actually live in the best country in the world. I do believe that. I do think our incentives are misaligned. And some of our thought processes could be improved to gear towards happiness. But this country is an amazing incubator for people to create extreme happiness. And I'm talking about hero status happiness that is not rivaled in anywhere else on this planet. And that's what's fantastic about this situation. We have a great opportunity to find different investment strategies that will just magnify everything that you do, but also extreme saving strategies and to not discount what I consider the two most important things that you want to spend money on, to me, would be education and experiences. But let's talk about where we do spend money. Let's talk through some of these statistics of where money is going in this country, because as you guys can see in this next slide, it's not going towards savings in the sense of our personal savings in the United States average 8.92%. So less than 10% is going back to ourselves. And that's an average, which means that some people are insane and they're just really, really fire and they save a ton of money. And so they're saving 90%. But there's a ton of people that aren't saving a damn dime. And what I'm talking about is 6 out of 10 people living paycheck to paycheck literally cannot crawl out of the primordial ooze. $500 to these people that are living paycheck to paycheck. They have a situation where they need to change their tire on their car, and they're literally thinking between selling semen and donating a kidney to try to get a little bit extra cash. That's what the dire situation is here, man. What do you think about this?
I just read an article that there are more and more families actually buying groceries on installment now in this country, on installment payments, groceries. But it really comes down to priorities, because you talk about 6 out of 10 people living paycheck to paycheck. What that statement doesn't say is what income bracket they're in. But the fact is, it's the $100,000 earner, the 6-figure earner, or the $40,000 a year earner are both in the same position. Either you know how to manage your money and live within your means and then invest that money, or you don't. Yeah. Right? It's the same thing. Mike Tyson, right? This guy made how much money? And he goes bankrupt.
100 million a fight.
Now, I think he made a total of like $340 million.
That's crazy.
And he went bankrupt.
How does that even happen?
But it's not how much money you're making. It's how much money you can save and then move into those investments that are going to pay you. Living to paycheck is really a problem of prioritizing how you're spending your money. Everybody thinks, if I just make a little bit more, everything's going to be solved. No, it's not. Because you're going to buy the Porsche, you're going to buy the bigger house. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, it's like, I deserve it. Well, the reality is you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
You think you do, but you can barely afford where you're living now. So when you make that next money, the next $10,000 in that big raise, you shouldn't leave where you're at.
Yeah.
You should stay where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I mean, just a great point around people that think that the solution to their problems is the next promotion, is the next job, is the next income generator for them. And that couldn't be further from the truth, in the sense that the actual thing that they need is to play defense. And they haven't proven that they are good money managers with no money. Why would they be better money managers with money? That's the question. And so what we actually see is that 60% of professional athletes claim bankruptcy in their first 5 years after leaving a professional league. We see that most lottery winners are worse off than they were before they won the lottery in a very short time frame. And we see a lot of people that are getting promotions and that are getting higher salaries and bigger bonuses, claiming bankruptcy, living paycheck to paycheck, being tighter on finances than they ever were. And so what's given here? What gives? Why are we in this situation where we cannot be able to obtain wealth when we're given more income? And the answer to that is, of course, we need to play better defense. If we are making no money, then we need to be living well below that no money mark. And what I mean by no money, let's say you're making $20, $30, $35, $40,000 and you are living in your own apartment. You have your own vehicle with your own insurance. You shop at fine stores like Whole Foods, or what I like to call Whole Paycheck, and you have a storage unit, and you have enough money to go to Starbucks. And it's like, no. We need to play defense. We need to live with 5 roommates. We need to ride the BUS. We need to go and get rid of that junk in self-storage. And we need to be eating beans and rice, baby.
Man, if you're going to Starbucks making 25, 30 grand a year, you're in trouble. I mean, you really are in trouble. Like, you're spending too much money on stuff that doesn't matter. And at the end of the day, I think, a big thing about being financially responsible, I think, comes down to the goal that you have. A lot of people, it's like you're living day to day, but you don't have any goal. So if you're not waking up with the idea of what you want out of your life or where you want to go or what you want to achieve, it's very hard to not spend that money, because you're looking at Starbucks like happiness, right? But if you're looking out in the future and saying, hey, maybe I want to be a homeowner, or I want, maybe you do want the Porsche, but you're going to buy it in cash, or you want this investment property or whatever you want, you've got to have a goal out there that's bigger than the feeling of Starbucks, which I don't know. I don't even like their coffee, to be honest.
It's always burnt tasting.
It's Dunkin' Donuts for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck, Dunkin' Donuts. He going to do you right? Get a donut for $1?
Probably a better value. So let's go into that a little bit, because I think you touched on something that is absolutely important that every young Henry needs to have, is a big goal. And I'm not talking about an incrementally bigger goal than what you have today. Let's say you're making $100,000 and you feel like you can make $120,000. That is not a goal that $20,000, you're not going to get out of bed in the morning with excitement, with enthusiasm, with the ability to knock down walls and go into superpower mode. You just aren't. It's just not a big enough goal. It's still an average goal. You were average at 100,000. You'll be average at 120,000. You'll be average at $150,000. You'll be average at various levels of wealth until you get to a very, very superhero magnified goal that is going to take you to that next level. And what I mean by that is that you want to be a millionaire. You want to be a superhero. You want to spend your time doing things that matter on this planet. And that is what I firmly believe is going to motivate you enough to get to the young Henry status, and to get you beyond the young Henry status into the millionaire status. And for me, I will tell you that I have been poor in my life, And I have been rich in my life, and being rich leaves you with much more opportunity to be happy because you are given time. Simply having riches does not create time or does not create happiness, but it does create time. And if you are intentional with your time and you focus on the things that make you happy, you can therefore be happier when you have more resources. And the other thing I will mention is that the closer you get to having wealth, to having actual major wealth on this planet, the less money you will spend on ridiculous things. And what I mean by that is, typically this happens to folks that are getting into their first $1 million. Let's say you achieve the $1 million mark, or you're just a little bit above or a little bit below, but you're right around $1 million. At that point, you are living the most frugal life that you've ever lived. Because what happens is you are so motivated by the things that you have going. You typically have business ventures going. You have real estate going. You have all types of different things moving. And you're just so excited and jazzed at putting more and more resources towards these things that the money that you have to spend on consumer items is remarkably low. You don't think about consumer items in the same way as somebody with much less net worth that thinks, man, having $1 million or having a large net worth is so far away. So I'm going to make myself happy today. I'm going to go ahead and buy the Mercedes-Benz to make it look like I have $1 million net worth and make myself feel better today. And guess what? I am further away from my overarching goal.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the big things about, building wealth and growing wealth is that it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of consistency, right? So you have to be consistent day to day, month to month, year to year. It doesn't happen overnight. Everybody looks for that get rich quick scheme, right? Like everybody looks at real estate and they're like, I want to get into real estate. Well, it's a lot of management. It's a lot of time. The income's inconsistent, but over time you build wealth, right? Real estate is not, oh, I bought a multifamily property and now I'm rich. It's, I bought a multifamily property and it's growing at 1% on appreciation. I'm getting some depreciation on my taxes, and the cash flow is maybe $300-$400 a month, right? My income or my mortgage is getting paid down, which is where most of my value is, which is true for most properties. That mortgage pay down is where most of the value in that real estate is, and then the appreciation. It's not the cash flow. Everybody thinks, oh, I get one property, I'm going to be rich. Like nothing is like that. No. Stocks aren't like that. Yeah, you may buy one stock, put $1,000 into it, and it doubles. That's not going to change your life. Those are far and few between as it is. Most of the market is you're putting it in there and you're waiting for time. You're betting on America to grow over time and that income and that basically that stock to grow. So it takes a lot of time and consistency to grow that money. But there's a lot of credence. There's a picture. I wish we had it for this, but of, it's the rich guy versus the poor guy, right? And the poor guy has the Gucci belt, the nice hat, all the nice clothes. And the rich guy is he's Bill Gates at, waiting for McDonald's, right? He's got
New Balance,
the dad jeans, the New Balance, Warren Buffett's living in the house, same house for 40 years, driving a Cadillac. Like they're not what you would expect from rich people. And, the more money you get, and I've noticed this in myself, is as you start building assets that pay yourself, you're looking to buy things that save you time.
Yeah.
You're no longer looking for the Porsche or whatever. You're looking for things that are going to save you time in your day, and you're willing to put your money there. So, we talk about goals, but there's a guy, Grant Cardone. You know Cardone, right?
Come on now, Uncle G.
Uncle G. So Uncle G, he talks about why he bought his plane, and his accountant's coming to him and telling him this is not a good investment, this is the worst investment. And he talks to all his billionaire friends, and every one of the billionaire friends is telling him to buy it, right? Because of the amount of time you're going to save and the value that you're going to get. But I think your priority really starts to shift as you make more money and your wealth grows. But up front, you got to block and you got to tackle.
Yeah,
that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, and let's bring up this quote from Uncle G, because he says it best. And the reason we have a couple different philosophies in Young Henrys, but the 3 books that we really emphasize, really, really important, are the first one is The Good Earth. We're all about dirt over here. Mark says he owns some multifamily. I own some myself. We buy a lot of dirt. That's a big thing for us. Is The Good Earth is kind of how you get into our mindset. And then we talk about a lot of this defensive stuff. So whether it's the Everyday Millionaire, whether it's Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman, something to do with kind of doing great habits around spending. And then we quickly magnify things. We go 10x, baby, and we go talk about Uncle G. And Uncle G says average is a failing formula. Let's bring this up for folks. So he says average is a failing plan. Average doesn't work in any area of life. Anything that you give only average amounts of attention to will start to subside and will eventually cease to exist. And so this is sort of the pinnacle of the teachings that we'll be giving here on this podcast have to do with this average formula. People talk about, I want to get to the middle class. I want to have work-life balance. I want to have average, sort of incomes or outcomes to certain things that I do in life. But do you want average incomes? Do you want middle class? Is that really what you thought about when you were a 5-year-old and you were a superhero with a cape on? You thought you wanted to be average? You thought you wanted a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Katy? That was what you wanted? I don't think so, baby. You don't go to the movies and want average acting. You don't go to the ballet and want average dancing. You don't go and see Whitney Houston because you want to see somebody hit average octave levels. You want the best out of everything that you pay for, and yet you only expect average from yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Uncle G's right. Average really is a failing formula, and it really comes down to the amount of effort that you're putting in your life, but you got to put it in the right spots. Like, life is really hard. Like, anybody who tells you that life's easy is lying to you. No matter who you are, life is difficult, even at the rich level. You have so much going on, whether it's this investment, rentals, and you can part some of that out and get some of that done by an outside source, but it cuts out of the revenue. So even, people with a bunch of investments, are working a ton of hours. But the difference is they start to work for themselves and the things that they want to do, and they're seeing the direct value from that investment and the time that they're putting in, especially people that have built their own business. You look at my brother, he's working a full-time job and then running a business outside of work, doing a great job, and he loves his life. You know what I mean? So, but as he keeps going, he gets more and more freedom, and feeling like he doesn't have to work that first job. He likes working it, but, at the end of the day, you have to consistently put in this effort, because if you don't, you're just going to be average. And at the end of the day, sitting as a middle-class person, you're really in the middle and you don't get any benefit. You're really paying all the taxes and you get no government benefit. I mean, the government benefit goes to the lower 50%. They say 50% of out of the bottom 50% of this country, they only pay 3% of the taxes.
Yeah.
So a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh, they pay taxes. Yeah, they pay taxes, but they also get massive benefits back. Once you start getting into the middle class, these are the people that are paying taxes and getting no benefit because they don't qualify, right? So they're doing the right thing. They're working their 40, 50 hours. They're living paycheck to paycheck. They're not getting any help. And it seems really tough. It seems like the American dream for them is dead, but it's not. I mean, you have to put more and more effort in. And I'm not advocating for like 80, 90, 100 hours. Like, I wouldn't want anybody to do that, but you do got to find ways to increase your income. And a lot of that's through education and really, maximizing your time, whatever job you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, you should be trying to move up, but the second you do and you make that money, that extra money, you have to put it back into a vehicle that you can make more money with. You have to put it into an asset. Don't go buy those random things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think Robert Kiyosaki is another guy that we're both big fans of. Rich Dad, Poor Dad changed my life. And he talks about rich people don't pay taxes.
They do not.
Rich people do not pay taxes. What did Donald Trump say in the 2016 debate with Hillary Clinton when she accuses him of not paying taxes? He says, I don't pay taxes. I'm smart. Right? Like, and he's being facetious, but he's also being truthful in the sense that Rich people do not pay taxes. When you're a business owner, when you own real estate or things of very, very high value to the government, they're not going to make you pay the taxes that you would personally pay if you were working for that money. And the reason for that is because you're creating jobs. Very simply, you're creating jobs, you're creating housing, you're creating things that are value to the greater economy. And therefore, you have some different tax advantages. And it's not tax evasion, which is completely illegal. It's tax avoidance, which is done through utilizing the U.S. IRS code to make sure you maximize your benefits and make sure you pay as little to Uncle Sam as possible. But you have to be an owner. You have to be an investor. You have to move that money from your W-2 into something of a vehicle, as Mark was suggesting, a vehicle that actually shields your taxes and increases and compounds your wealth. And so, again, the young Henrys assumes that you are driving to work right now, that you have the headache of being sitting in traffic and have to. But the idea of the young Henry is go ahead and take that income. You got to pay taxes. Uncle Sam takes his taxes right off the top. He don't trust you. Uncle Sam don't trust you, right? You're going to take 40% right off the paycheck. He's like, no, that one's mine. But what we're so foolish to do is we don't pay ourselves up front. We don't pay ourselves at all in some cases. And therefore, we get into a situation where we get back into that rat race and even deeper in a lot of instances. But the idea now that you guys are being educated with some Henry knowledge is to take some of that W-2, that hard work that you do, that hard-earned money. If you're a ball player, you're sacrificing your body. If you're a singer, I just watched the Whitney Houston documentary. Man, she sacrificed the hell out of her lungs and her voice capacity, right? So she's sacrificing everything to make that dollar, and then she's getting taxed at 40%, and she's getting to enjoy very, very little of that. But what I'm saying is, whatever you get left out of that W-2 job, you better be making that money work for you. And that's that Kiyosaki in there is make money work for you. Rich people do not work for money. Money works for them.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to paying taxes, if you're trading time for money, I'm going to a job and I'm working and they're going to pay me. That's what the government's taxing the most. That's why a lot of rich people actually don't pay taxes, especially business owners, because they can control how much money they actually pay themselves, right? So they're going to pay themselves what they need to live, and the rest is staying in the business that's not being taxed. So if I'm a business owner, I'm a young business owner, I'm trying to grow my business, I'm not pulling as much money out, and what I am pulling out, I'm paying very little tax on. But you have to look at what the government is incentivizing people to do, right? The government wants to incentivize housing. They want to incentivize real estate. They want to incentivize, business and growth and those type of things. I mean, the government really looks at it like this. If they can incentivize the economy to grow, they're going to take in more tax revenue. So that's what they do through the tax code. They know over the past 100 years that no matter what the tax policy is, I don't care what they tell you, tax the rich. Like, the reality is they only take in 17 to 18% of GDP. Mm-hmm. So no matter what they tell you the top marginal tax rate is, which means, okay, instead of it being, let's say 36%, we're going to tax rich people at 60%. Like, it doesn't matter. They only take in 17% of GDP. So the goal is really growth. So they're incentivizing you to help grow the economy. And you have to understand what they're doing, because that's where the tax incentives are, right? So with real estate, you get that depreciation on your building, which is huge, right? It's 127.5 of your overall building, right? So about like 1/28 of your building, you get to depreciate off your income. And that's a huge amount depending on what market you're in, right? Out here in Houston, the median income for a house is what, 385? Like, so what's, 1/28 of 385? It's like 15 grand off your income. So it's quite a bit of money just you're saving on your taxes. But yeah, it's all about what the government wants you to do. So understanding that portion of it so you can save the dollars that you do make, very, very important.
Yeah, the system is definitely developed by the government. It's developed, as Kiyosaki says in his book, it's developed to create employees. And the middle class, by and large, are a group of employees that work for a corporation that get paid a salary or hourly, and they end up getting taxed at the highest rates. And so what is the system doing to make sure that we have future employees? Well, they are going to have a school system that's standardized towards making employees. Kiyosaki, early on in the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, raises his hand and he asks his teacher, "Hey teacher, where's the class on making money? Where's the class on being rich? Where's the class on building wealth?" Right? And the teacher says, "We don't teach that here." Well, why not? Right? That's what we're all supposed to be doing is building wealth and creating money and doing things that actually sort of enrich our lives and things of that nature. And she says, "Absolutely not. That's not what you're doing in school." Well, what are you doing in school? What you're doing in school is you are learning how to be an employee. You're learning how to get things done in an organized and standard way that's useful to businesses and will translate one day into you getting a job. They're preparing you to get a job. Once you get a job, then guess what? You get to pay taxes.
Facts.
And so then your taxes get to pay for those teachers. And,
Facts.
and this is what we are talking about, is that, hey, like the government, the process, the system, everything we've been told is geared towards making us employees, making us average, keeping us in the rat race, even down to the consumer items we buy, right? It's not a coincidence that we are so enticed and so developed. Our minds are so developed to think these items that they're advertising ad nauseum through social media, through our television, through entertainment, through our friends and social circles, these things that are coming up constantly are basically there to keep us in the rat race, to keep us as taxpayers as long as the government possibly can.
Oh, facts. Yeah, so you talk about, school. I mean, school really is the industrial method of teaching, right? I mean, it really is. And I never even realized this until I got into manufacturing. So I've been working in manufacturing for like 12 years now in the management level. But outside of the plant that I started at, I went to Ford Motor Company in Buffalo, New York. And it is crazy how similar the school structure is to that plant. So like you go into the administrative part of that plant and like into where they change. And I mean, there's literally a cafeteria. The floors are the same. Like the layout's the same. They used to have a buzzer system. Like everything that you learned in math, New York is called Math A, Math B, which is like, basically it's blueprint reading is pretty much what it is, right? Pythagorean theorem, circles, etc. Like school literally prepares you to work in a manufacturing facility and become an employee. And like when I started working in manufacturing, it's like the first thing I really realized with how it's structured. And that's why a lot of people like manufacturing, because it feels very comfortable. I mean, you went through like 12, 13 years of the same kind of routine, and manufacturing is really the same type of thing, right? You start at a certain time, lunch at a certain time, like the structure is very the same, but you're taught to be an employee. You're not taught how to make money. And I mean, that Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, is definitely one of the first fundamental books you should read. And it really kind of opens your mind to how to look at certain purchases, liabilities, assets, and really blocking and tackling, and then looking forward towards growth in your life and kind of how to move money.
Yeah, and there's just, as we go through the podcast and as we start talking about building wealth, one of the things that you will go through, as let's say you're at the beginning of this journey and you're like, where do I go from here? Well, the roadmap will be that we are going to teach you the fundamentals of the defensive side of it, because if you don't understand the defense, if you don't understand how to build up $1,000 to have an emergency fund, as Dave Ramsey would want you to do in the baby steps, and if you don't understand how to avoid daily pitfalls and habits that create bad consumption, if you can't understand that, then really teaching you anything about building wealth is sort of pointless, right? You can't even kind of manage the small amount of money that you have now. Why in the world would you want to have a larger amount of money that's going to be even more poorly mismanaged and cause stress and frustration in your life? So we start at the beginning, and we'll talk about what it takes to really manage your money, to really look at expenditures. we walk through scenarios. We'll look at different people and the way that they manage their money. And we can pick out specific things that they could do a little bit better. And again, it's not so that you eat beans and rice. I mentioned that earlier. I don't believe that you necessarily have to go down to that level. I believe there's a balance, but it's intentionality with your money and understanding where every dollar goes. That's what's important, and creating good habits, right? If you create good habits, I've never had a budget in my life. I've never had a written, printed budget or anything like that, but I've had great habits. I've had habits that make it so that every time I go to the restaurant with my wife and kids, they don't even think about ordering a soda or anything because they realize that's the highest markup item in the restaurants, $3, right? At like a standard restaurant or casual dining, it's like $3 for a soda. And so like literally costs that restaurant maybe 15 cents for the syrup that they're actually going to put into that to that product. And so my point is that like, I don't need to go in and be like, I'm only going to spend $15 or $20 here. It's like already implied that like, we're not buying soda, we're getting water, and that we are going to order a meal that is, what we want. And like, we're going to the restaurant to have a good experience, and we're going to order the thing that we want, but we're not going to over order. We're not ordering appetizers. We're not probably ordering a dessert for every single person. We're probably able to share. And so there's some ideas around defense that can be had with not necessarily lowering your standard of living or never going out to restaurants or never going out and experiencing anything, but with being intentional and understanding the value of everything before you purchase it and ingraining it in your head to where it's literally a habit. You don't think about it. It's like waking up and breathing in the morning. You just go in and you constantly make the same types of decisions, the value-driven decisions. And so we'll start with that defense before we ever talk through a lot of really, really exciting stuff, which will be offensive related. We believe in a diversity of thinking and diversity of knowledge. So, Mark and I have invested heavily in real estate. And so we have a lot of different avenues that we've taken: single family homes, multifamily, short-term, midterm, long-term rentals. We have areas that we've invested in that are developing. We have invested in very, very high appreciation areas. We have all kinds of ADU type of knowledge. So a lot of real estate knowledge, but which we believe in firmly is one of the best methods to creating and sustaining wealth. But as Mark mentioned, when you're building your portfolio, you absolutely do not feel rich, despite the fact that your net worth is at times extremely high, but you feel poor because you look at your bank account and like literally every dollar has gone into the dirt, has gone into your next investment. So that's going to be one aspect of what we'll talk about. But then we will talk to people that have Turo as a business, and they're making money on different cars they have. We will talk to somebody that is mowing lawns. Literally, I have a guy at my work. He's a manager at a major manufacturer for HVAC, and he mows 16 lawns a month. I'm going to bring him in. He's an interesting character. And then, and it's, somebody like Mark said, his brother is doing a snowplow thing in Buffalo. We'll talk to him. We'll talk to my aunt who started an art studio after retiring from a corporate 9-to-5. So people at different levels, somebody that's just retired from property management that has gone into full-time real estate. What's their thought process? How are they a young Henry? How is their mindset going to be set apart from the average mindset that we're trying to break out of?
Yeah, consistency over time really, really matters, right? And like, even myself, I feel poor from time to time because you sink all your money into an investment. You take a lot of risk. You really do end up cash poor at sometimes. So it's very important to look at your journey, not just where you're at, but where you came from and like how much net worth. You should have some sort of spreadsheet or tracker about total net worth, as you grow your income and grow your net worth. Otherwise, you're going to just feel like you're poor when the reality is, yeah, all these assets combined, $500,000, $1 million, whatever it may be, but you're going to feel like you have no money because you really don't have any money. It's all tied up in physical assets that are making a return, growing equity, depreciation, whatever it may be, or even the stock market. It's sitting there growing, but it's not cash you can spend, you know? And like for most people out there listening to this today, you have to really focus on this idea of blocking and tackling. I mean, if you're looking at what's going on in the economy today, the Fed just came out. Maybe this is the last rate hike, but they just increased the Fed funds rate again, which is the rate that banks trade at, right? So that cost of that credit is going up. So everything's getting more expensive to buy on top of the inflation, and they're not really hemorrhaging inflation. Prices aren't really coming down. They're kind of staying pretty consistent where they're at. So if you don't really start blocking and tackling and you continue on your path of buying things that you don't need to impress people that you don't like with money you don't have, you're going to be in a worse and worse case as these rates go up. I mean, it's a tough time. Our next episode next week, we're really going to talk about blocking and tackling and look at an example of a vacation that two different individuals have taken and what that really means in the cost of dollars and what that means in the long term. I think you'll be blown away.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. And in closing, I would just say you guys have made the right decision to step forward and to be a part of the Young Henry's journey, because right now you are absorbing knowledge. You are going to get so much knowledge out of listening to this podcast weekly as we post episodes, and you are going to be able to go and attack. Again, Mark says that right now the interest rates are going up. Absolutely. But we're going to build a system for you. We're going to give you the tools to make money in any economy, under any circumstances, because as Mark mentioned, the interest rates go up. Well, actually, yeah, they have, but there's more deals. You know, people are getting scared. Scared money starts to hide. And guess what? Millionaires are made during times of transition. And so it's a great time to buy, just like it was a great time to buy last year, just like it was a great time to buy the year before that. And there's always going to be opportunities. And so we are going to talk to people that are creative, that are thinking outside the box, that are absorbing knowledge, because as I find, it's exciting to absorb knowledge. It's exciting to hear a diversity of thought of different people doing it different ways, because it's something that enriches our lives, and it causes me to have actual happiness. It's the process. And that's what you realize, is that it's not a destination. It's not a dollar amount. There's no medal at the end of this. You won't get a grade at the end of life that says you got an A that validates everything that you do. No, it's a process. People that win Super Bowls, people that win gold medals, they don't talk about them standing on the podium as the best time ever that they've ever had. They talk about the locker room. They talk about the in-game situations. They talk about the camaraderie that they had with the people that they network with. They talk about building up to that level of getting to compete at that point. And that's no different than business or anything else in your life. Fall in love with your process. Fall in love with what you do. Have more get-tos than have-tos. And if you do that, you will be happy, and you will be among the small majority, which will be a small majority. Right now, it's a small minority of people that are in that bucket. But we hope you stay tuned to Young Henry's, because there's a lot more to come.
We'll see y'all next week.